life's not fair, is it? You see, I shall never be king.
What if Mufasa, the beloved king, was unknowingly the architect of Scar's downfall? We all know Scar as the ultimate villain, but what if his descent into darkness wasn't entirely his fault? This video unearths the hidden truths about Mufasa's subtle actions and how they tragically paved the way for Scar's villainy. When we think of the Lion King, Mufasa seems perfect. The wise king, the amazing father, everything good about Pride Rock. And Scar? He's just evil, jealous, scheming, murderous. The story appears simple: good versus evil, hero versus villain. But what if we've been watching this story all wrong? What if there's something darker hiding beneath the surface? We've always seen this movie through Simba's eyes, through Mufasa's legacy. We root for the heroes and hate the villain. But shift that perspective for a moment. Look at the relationship between two brothers, one who got everything and one who got nothing. What you're about to discover might change how you see the Lion King forever, because the truth is, Mufasa, despite all his wisdom and nobility, might have created the very monster who destroyed him. This isn't about excusing murder. What Scar did was unforgivable, but understanding how someone becomes a villain, that's a different story entirely. Think about this. Scar isn't even his real name. The villain we know is literally named after his wound, his permanent injury. In the extended Lion King lore, his birth name was Taka, but after that scar appeared across his eye, that name vanished. He became defined entirely by his damage. Who allowed that to happen? Mufasa was supposedly wise and compassionate, so why didn't he stop everyone from calling his brother by such a cruel name? Why didn't the king say, "My brother deserves better than being called by his worst moment"? Every single day, every time someone spoke to him, Scar was reminded he was broken, marked, less than perfect. While Mufasa's name meant strength and royalty, his brother was reduced to an injury. Can you imagine introducing yourself with a name that highlights your deepest insecurity, your permanent flaw? Mufasa never stopped it. That silence said everything Scar needed to know about his worth. From birth, Mufasa was destined for the throne. Every lesson, every piece of wisdom, every moment of training prepared him to be king. The circle of life, the great kings of the past, all of it centered on the firstborn son. Scar's purpose? Nothing. His entire existence was defined by what he wasn't. Not the heir, not the chosen one, not important. Unless something happened to Mufasa, Scar would spend his whole life in limbo, waiting for a role that would never come. He was the backup plan nobody wanted to use, the spare that everyone hoped they'd never need. Watch the movie again with fresh eyes. Mufasa walks through Pride Rock with total confidence. Every animal bows, listens, respects him. He belongs there completely. Now watch Scar. He lurks in shadows. He's physically separated from the pride in almost every scene. His own family has pushed him to the edges of everything. Nobody asks his opinion. Nobody includes him. Nobody seems to notice he exists. Mufasa created this system. Mufasa maintained it. Mufasa benefited from it most. Scar wasn't always bitter and twisted. If you look closely, there are glimpses of someone intelligent, articulate, even charismatic. Someone who could have been valuable to the pride. Someone who had potential. So when did things change? When did frustration become murderous rage? More importantly, when did Mufasa notice? The answer is uncomfortable. Either Mufasa didn't see what was happening, or he saw it and didn't care. This supposedly all-knowing king who understood the delicate balance of nature, who could sense danger from miles away, completely missed the darkness growing in his own brother. Or maybe Mufasa's wisdom had blind spots. Maybe Scar's pain wasn't important enough to address. Maybe the feelings of a second-born prince didn't matter compared to running a kingdom. The result was abandonment either way. Remember the opening of the movie? Well, every animal in the kingdom celebrates Simba's birth. Where's Scar? Alone in a dark cave, playing with a mouse, talking to himself? Not at Pride Rock? Not participating in this massive family moment? Does Mufasa go find him? Does the king check on his brother? Does anyone wonder why Scar is isolating himself? No. When Mufasa finally confronts Scar about missing the ceremony, there's no real concern, no attempt to understand. Just a lecture on duty and a reminder of who's king. He says, "You should have been there," without ever asking, "Why weren't you?" Or, "What's wrong?" Or, "Are you okay?" Scientists have proven that social exclusion activates the same pain centers in your brain as physical injury. Being ignored and overlooked causes actual damage to your mental health. It warps your thinking, creates feelings of worthlessness, and builds rage that has nowhere to go. When that exclusion comes from your own family, the damage multiplies. When you watch everyone else receive love and attention while you get nothing, something inside starts to break. You start thinking, if they won't see me for who I am, I'll make them see me for what I become. Scar is brilliant, maybe even smarter than Mufasa. He's strategic, articulate, capable of complex planning. His scheme to take over Pride Rock, though evil, required serious intelligence and long-term thinking. Why wasn't this valued? Why wasn't Scar given a role that used his obvious abilities? An advisor position, a strategist, any job where his mind could serve the pride? Because Mufasa didn't see the need. In his worldview, physical strength and traditional wisdom mattered most. Intelligence and different ways of thinking didn't fit into his narrow definition of value. Imagine being Scar. Imagine watching your less clever brother receive endless praise while your considerable talents are completely ignored. Imagine having ideas that could genuinely help everyone, but never being asked, never being consulted, never getting a chance to prove yourself. That kind of wasted potential eats at you. When you know you're capable of greatness but are constantly denied the opportunity, when you see less talented people getting chances you're refused, when your abilities mean nothing because you don't fit someone's narrow mold, that destroys something fundamental inside you. Mufasa built that system. He decided what kind of strength mattered. He determined who was valuable and who wasn't. Then Simba was born. For Scar, this wasn't just another family celebration. This was the moment his worst fear became permanent reality. He was already second in line, already the forgotten one, but at least there was a tiny sliver of possibility. Maybe, somehow, one day. Simba's birth erased that forever. Now Scar wasn't just second, he was irrelevant. The line of succession was carved in stone, and he would never matter. That presentation ceremony, that wasn't Scar being petty. That was him facing the truth that his entire existence had become meaningless. His brother had an heir, a future king, a legacy. Scar had nothing. Can you imagine that realization? Understanding that your whole life, from that moment forward, would be spent watching others live the life you could have had? That every one of Simba's achievements would remind you of your own worthlessness? Pain doesn't heal on its own. It compounds. Every time Scar was overlooked, the wound deepened. Every time his hurt was ignored, the resentment grew stronger. Every time Mufasa failed to see what was happening, the distance between them became unbridgeable. This is how villains are made. Not through one terrible choice, but through 1,000 small moments of neglect that pile up until something inside snaps. Imagine if Mufasa had done things differently. Imagine if he'd sought out Scar after Simba's presentation, not to lecture, but to genuinely talk. "Brother, I'm worried about you. What's going on?" Imagine if he'd said, "I know being second born is hard. You have talents we're not using. Be my advisor. Help me lead this pride." Imagine if he'd stopped others from using that cruel nickname. His name is Taka. He's a prince and he deserves respect. Would any of this have changed what happened? Could simple acts of recognition and inclusion have prevented everything? We'll never know for sure. But most people don't start out wanting to be villains. We don't wake up one day and choose evil. We're pushed there by pain so deep that darkness seems like the only option left. We become desperate to be seen, to matter, even if it means doing terrible things. Scar didn't start evil. The extended materials hint at young Taka, before the scar, before the bitterness. Clever, yes. Sarcastic maybe, but not a monster. That transformation took years. Years of rejection. Years of watching his brother succeed while he failed. Years of being told in countless silent ways that he didn't matter. Mufasa could have stopped it at any point. He chose not to. Can good people cause harm through neglect? Can kind people hurt others through blindness? Can wise leaders make terrible mistakes